So you've got a couple different firearms down here. Let's talk about maybe what single action is, what double action is, and when one might have one or the other, or both, or just one.
Sure. So as you can imagine, the easiest way to think about single action versus double action is that single action does one thing, double action does two things. So specifically, let's look at these revolvers first. So this revolver here, 38 Special Smith & Wesson. So you can see here, I'll try to demonstrate the trigger is in the full up position. Now when I cock the hammer back, you can see that the trigger goes almost all the way to the back. So now what I've done, I've taken it and put it into single action mode. So now with one slight little hair press of the trigger, the hammer will fall and the gun will go boom.
So when it's forward, the trigger press does two things. It brings the hammer back and releases it. In single action mode, it just releases the hammer.
Right. So if I were to press the trigger right now, the trigger action would pull the hammer back and then release it. So as you can imagine, the amount of force that my finger has to exert on the trigger is significantly more.
Might be 10 or 12 pounds or more.
Right, whereas in the single action mode, it's probably more like 4 pounds.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so that's a revolver.
That is a single action or double action revolver. Now this is as you can tell, it's a very similar gun, another revolver. This is double action only in the sense that the hammer is completely shrouded, so there's no way to cock the hammer.
The hammer's in there, it's just, you don't see it from the
external. Exactly, yep. So the only way to fire this gun is to just pull the trigger all the way back. It internally cocks the hammer, and then it releases it.
And we're going to talk in a minute about why you'd select one over the other, but let's maybe look at your Sig Sauer that also lets you fire in both modes.
Exactly, yep. So Michael, here I've got a Sig P226. This is a 9mm semi-automatic handgun, and this is actually can be shot in single action or double action. So here I'm going to... So what I've done here is I've released the slide, and I've simulated the gun having a round loaded into the chamber.
And because you rack the slide, the hammer's cocked.
Exactly, and now the hammer's cocked. So this would be in single action mode. So therefore, again, you can tell the trigger is a lot further back. So with only a 4.5 to 5 pound press of the trigger, the gun will go off.
And it'll be a shorter trigger press as well.
Yes, significantly shorter. So here, watch this. So here we are in the double action mode, where just like the revolver, if I pull that trigger back, it's actually going to cock the hammer, and then it's going to release it. So there's a further...
So two actions.
Yep, two actions. There's a longer trigger distance movement, and like in the revolver, it takes quite a bit more force.
Now, I think one thing interesting on your Sig Sauer is that has a decocker, that has a lever that you can use to decock the hammer, and that doesn't exist on the revolver.
Exactly.
So if I wanted to decock the revolver, I've got to be very precise about how I press the trigger and release the hammer. Otherwise, I may have an accidental or negligent discharge. We don't have that problem on the Sig Sauer.
Yep, the Sig Sauer has this neat little decocker lever where all you do is press that, and it automatically decocks it.
So we've looked at a revolver that can be fired in either mode, a revolver that's double action only, a semi-automatic that can be fired in either mode. Let's talk about this one here. This is one of our favorites, 1911, and this is what?
This is single action only.
Single action only.
Yep,
so this can only be fired in single action. So if I had the hammer forward and I press the trigger, nothing's going to happen.
Nothing's going to happen.
It's not going to happen. I need to have that hammer back before it's going to fire. Single action means that it's always a light and short trigger press, so what these manufacturers have put in the 1911s is an external safety. And that's not something you find on most semi-automatics.
Exactly.
Yeah.